Hello and welcome back to this Downplay Dualistic Crusade. This video will be a short update of all the things I've picked up on other non-Laserdisc formats, so DVD, Blu-ray, and the like. Some really interesting things have been popping up along with just some amazing new titles and restorations coming out from both studio and boutique labels, so as always it's very hard and difficult to keep up with those, and then if and when they may go on sale, there's a lot of great sales that have been running in the past few months as well. So as usual, this is a total mixed bag of items, including some really interesting things that I found locally. The first of which is, as you know, if you've seen any of my previous videos in this series, I just can't go without picking up the occasional VHS tape for whatever reason. But this is actually something that I've wanted to get into, and these are particular things that are unfortunately only available from Studio Masters on VHS tape. They were only released on tape, and even if some are in the public domain, those versions on YouTube or other places are from varying sources. So whenever I see one of the Republic classic serials on VHS, and I know it's not one of the ones they released on Laserdisc, and it's inexpensive like this one was, which is the classic serial Haunted Harbor in this double tape set in the Cliffhanger collection from Republic Home Video back in the early 90s. Whenever I see one of these, which is very infrequently, this was, like literally a $1.50. So I've always tried to see more and more classic serials, and Republic was the king of serials without any question. I know this one in particular isn't as highly regarded. I know there's a particularly unconvincing sea monster in it, but that's part of the charm of getting into classic serials. And as I said, Republic did do brand new masters from their Studio Vault sources for their serials, or at least most of them, in the home video era, but they only released some on Laserdisc, and some of those made it to DVD or got DVD releases, but not all of them did. And Republic did most of their masters on VHS, so unfortunately serials like this are pretty much stuck. If you're wanting the proper official version from Studio Elements, you're stuck with getting these dual cassette releases. So of course you have two cassettes inside the slipcase, and these are not things you find every day. So this is the first one I've found of a Republic serial that only has a tape release. Again, with most serials, they've sort of lapsed into the public domain, and there are so many cheap, crappy DVDs or crappy uploads made from varying copies of dubious sources, usually 16 millimeter. Usually they're not complete, or they're missing the opening titles, or they mix chapters together, or they do their own edits. So to try and see a serial properly, you need to try and track down the best restored version. So unfortunately for a chunk of the Republic serials, your best bet is to still go all the way back to VHS tape. That also, it's not just Republic though. Sony did a number of classic Columbia serials, but they only released them on VHS tape. Some have gotten DVD releases like the classic Batman serials, but not all of them. And then some, like the Shadow serial, when that was released by Mill Creek, actually had to go back and use the Sony VHS masters because they weren't doing new scans of serials. So a lot of modern releases or DVD releases, or even sometimes Blu-ray releases, are having to go back to these old video masters anyway, and sometimes they don't transfer them very well because it's usually not the big labels that are doing these. Usually it's sometimes Mill Creek, it's mostly companies like VCI. Although VCI has really stepped up their game, they've done a number of Blu-ray releases of serials that have gotten really great reviews, and now they're doing titles from the Universal library. So thankfully it's a good time to be a serial fan. I've always enjoyed them, but I'd never gotten hot and heavy into them until now, and now I'm just trying to see more and more. So this was just a no-brainer, getting one of the VHS exclusive Republic serials. Next, for the lone DVD, is another rare and random finding of a Warner Archive MOD DVD-R disc in the wild. It's a film I've always wanted to see simply for the star pairing, which just sounds phenomenal, and that's the MGM 1949 film Malaya, I'm not sure how you pronounce it exactly. As you can see on the beautiful original poster art here, this pairs Jimmy Stewart and Spencer Tracy, which is already seemingly like a match made in heaven, but it also has Sidney Greenstreet, and was apparently his final film role along with John Hodiak and the legendary Lionel Barrymore. The film itself seems to be a sort of post-war drama with some wartime elements still creeping in. So, sort of, it's not quite a spy thriller, but it is very much in the vein of a lot of films in the 40s that were still dealing with sort of the aftermath of World War II elements, and I guess a little bit of black market operations in a foreign country. So I've just always had this on my watch list, and it's, another Warner Archive release that I've always meant to get, even though it is just a standard MOD disc. But this is, anytime I can chip away at a Warner Archive title. They're not discs you see every day. So this is just a wonderful title I've always wanted to see, simply for the stars aligning and the fact that this is also Sidney Greenstreet's last film, who is one of my all-time favorite legendary figures from the Golden Age. And of course, being a gigantic Jimmy Stewart nerd, this is one of the few Stewart films I had not gotten to see yet. It wouldn't be one of these videos, and it wouldn't be me, if I didn't immediately go into some new Warner Archive Blu-rays. So I picked up two of their most recent releases that were just absolutely essential. The first being their new transfer of the final Thin Man film, Song of the Thin Man. So this completes their full release of the 6-film series. So if you've gotten the others, you'll have to get this one as well. They have done immaculate, amazing jobs on these, and these are all titles that they've been dream titles for classic film fans like myself. And once we got the first one and the second one, and they started trickling out, it was just a hope that we could get all 6. So it's amazing that we have all 6 films with brand new transfers, and we can finally retire the very aging DVDs, although I will hang on to my Laserdisc box set simply for nostalgic reasons. But you can now finally watch the entire 6-film series, and I can't wait to marathon all 6. I've been waiting to do that until Song of the Thin Man came out. Next is a title I dreamed about and hoped for years. This is one of Warner Brothers' last remaining Hitchcock titles that was not available in HD. There's only one more title they own, the really interesting outlier, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, the screwball comedy that Hitchcock made, really is a favor for Carole Lombard, where she is paired with the great Robert Montgomery. That's a fantastic film that you can always use as sort of a trivia answer, or if you have friends who are sort of Hitchcock fans, but they're not really Hitchcock aficionados, you can throw them a real curveball always by going, "Ooh, I've got a Hitchcock film I don't think you've seen. Oh, you'll love it." And you put on Mr. and Mrs. Smith, and they're like, "What?" And it doesn't compute. But that's the sole remaining title they haven't done, meaning the new release of 1950's Stage Fright, which is one of the most underrated titles in the Hitchcock canon. It is a bit classical because it is Hitchcock returning to a British set story, but it's also classical Hitchcock because it is dealing with the theatrical stage and personnel on and off the stage. So there's always this idea in the story of characters putting on acts and performing, and then the question becomes, what is real and what is this false manufactured reality of the stage and of these various personas. And it's also got some elements of screwball comedy because of how all this stuff interacts, but in a Hitchcock suspense drama. So in some ways, it's really sort of like 3 pictures in one. And it's really not good to go into the plot of this film, because this film does have a really intricate twist ending that doesn't always sit well with people, which is why I think its reputation has never been as great as it should be. But I remember the first time I saw this, I was really thrown by that, and it just really I know some people are infuriated by it, but it just really piqued my interest that this was something a little bit different. And it's also a picture that manages to have some fun. It's having your cake and eating it too, because it is a Hitchcock suspense film, but he gets to indulge in some tropes of being set in England again. This will be stuff that you see pop up all the way in Frenzy in 1972, where Hitchcock is getting to play around in the English idiom, if you will. It's also got some elements, I could argue, maybe of Dial M for Murder, because of the central locales of this particular story and the idea of characters adhering to stories, and then again, what is real, what is not real. But what's amazing about this is the archive did a brand new scan. This film had some damage, particularly in the last reel, that really held back the old DVD, which was an old master anyway, and that was seemingly based around the later Laserdisc that I have as well. So this has been long awaited. It is, again, a brand new transfer process for one of the most underrated Hitchcock films. I mean, of course, Hitchcock never made a quote-unquote bad film, because a bad film means that it would be boring and pointless and devoid of anything interesting. But Hitchcock has, in his canon of work, of course, I'm a Hitchcock nerd, so I am biased, and I admit that. I've tried to sell people on Topaz before, or Torn Curtain, so I totally get it. Not everybody is going to get these or be as nerdy, but Stage Fright is one of the real gems that I think everybody can enjoy and see the artistry behind. Plus, you get Marlene Dietrich in a Hitchcock film and a big star turn, so what's not to love? But what's really interesting is the added elements of it being essentially a theater film, and it's set in England, so you get Hitchcock once again playing with English character actors and English or British humor. This would be something that he would return to in Trouble with Harry, which is probably the greatest example of that. But this is basically Hitchcock getting to dabble a little bit more in some of what he would have done in his British period before coming to America with his contract with David O. Selznick. So it's a fascinating film for Hitchcock nerds because you can read so much into it, but it's still a supremely enjoyable, suspenseful, and downright charmingly funny film. It was not a box office success on its release, and so Hitchcock wound up doing what he always termed running for cover. And so after the non-hit status of a few films in the late 40s and culminating in Stage Fright, he would turn around and look for a property that was more commercially viable, and that became 1951's Strangers on a Train. So Hitchcock was very, I think, probably the master of realizing when he needed to hit and then finding the right property and building it up just right and selling it just right. But the films that were not hits, like Stage Fright, are not to be glossed over. This is a real hidden gem in the Hitchcock canon. It should be better known, and so I am so excited that we now have this beautiful new transfer that really vaults over the old DVD that had that damage baked in. And then lastly, I've finally picked up some titles from the Australian Imprint label. They have been doing some really intricate releases, but it's very difficult and very expensive to import them to the US all the way from Australia. And also, they're for the most part, they're licensing titles other labels like Criterion or Arrow or maybe Masters of Cinema have already done, for the most part using the same masters, but they also do really fancy packages and commission their own extras. Some of their releases have used new restorations and transfers that other people haven't yet. So you really do have to pick and choose what you might be interested in of theirs. The only issue is, from what I've heard, again, these are just the first discs I've gotten of theirs, so I'm not sure myself yet. From what I've heard, their encoding is not the greatest, which is why I waited and went with the much cheaper and much with even more extras Major Dundee release from Arrow, because Imprint did a big deluxe box set first. But again, the high cost is very... When you might have to pay $60 or $70 for one of these to get it imported here to the U.S., this is a bit steep for me, and I think it would be for most people. But it is great that they're doing this in Australia and allowing Australian film collectors and Blu-ray collectors the ability to have a home label where you can actually get great titles like this and not have to pay ridiculous import fees to Australia. So I managed to find a seller who was... parting out some Imprint releases, so I got these for a really affordable price. So I was always curious to check out their release of the 1974 masterpiece, The Parallax View, the supposed second in Alan J. Pakula's Paranoia trilogy. This is my favorite Warren Beatty performance in any film. It is one of the most paranoid of all films and really takes multiple viewings to digest. But Criterion just released their Blu-ray from a new restoration and scan. This version has even more extras than that release, plus this beautiful laminated slipcover and a really nice interior art design. But again, this has even more features, even though it is using the same Paramount 4K restoration. So this has 2 audio commentaries plus a Kim Newman piece, which is always fantastic. Then 2 additional video essays and pieces, and the original trailer is included. And they do all their standard releases in this typical design, and this is their spine number 94. So really, I just picked this up to check out the new extras, and because I knew I was not going to find this again for this cheaply, and I figured this would be my way to try out an Imprint standard release. The same seller had one of their Essential Film Noir box sets, so this is Collection 2, which follows, and they've done another 1 or 2, so I think they're up to Film Noir Box 4. But each one brings together four noirs, some more obscure that have not been represented well on home video. This has a nice, slick, laminated feel, just like the slip cases of their standard releases, and they have these nice cut tops that all lift off like so, and this is how seemingly all their box sets are. And then inside you have just the 4 standard cases. There is no printed booklet or anything, so when you get one of these and you pull them out the first time and you expect maybe a booklet or something, and you get 4 standard size cases, it does feel a little I don't know if they had to use full size cases, but it does have a nice premium feel to it. And then each has lovely original poster art with the Imprint logo on the top corner, and then each of these are also spine numbered. Each of these have some new and exclusive extras. They're all pretty much pre-existing masters. New City That Never Sleeps. These are all titles in this particular box set from Universal and Paramount. I think that's how it goes for the other box sets as well, but they may mix in some other studio titles. So these have some nice extras. It reminds me of what Kino Lorber's been doing with their film noir box sets, where they just bring together some different noirs in various volume box sets. But with these are much fancier because they have lovely cases, but they actually do have extras and commentaries. And then I guess if any of these had some of these on prior releases, those extras have been carried over as well. And of course, being a Don Siegel fan, I had to get this box set simply because it had the Blu-ray of Private Hell 36. And then each has the disc inside with a nice photo chosen from the film for the interior art. And then the outside of the box has the nice insert card included, so I just removed that, and you can tuck it inside the box with the disc cases very nicely. So it would have been nice to have a booklet. I think that's really the only thing missing from this, but it's a really nice little package with 4 particular noirs that have not had, royal treatment on Blu-ray, and some new exclusive extras were commissioned for this release. So it's a really nice package. Of course, it would be even better if they could have a booklet and brand new scans and everything. But considering these are lesser known titles, that's perfectly understandable. The only real problem so far with Imprint disc is, again, the extreme cost. So you really, if you're here in the U.S. or the U.K. or somewhere, you really have to look for deals you can find when somebody decides they want to sell their own, because otherwise you're going to be stuck paying the extremely high and hefty import cost. Some sellers are selling new Imprint discs nowadays, which I'll get to in just a second. So you can find them here in the U.S. from like Diabolique DVD or other places, but you will still have to pay a pretty hefty premium for those because they've already had to be been imported in anyway. And lastly, anybody who knows me knows this practically has my name on it. These are films that I have been obsessed with since I saw the very first film, which I think is one of the greatest films ever made and had such a profound effect on me that I pretty much think of it all the time and have read the novel many, many times. But these are films that have never had very nice treatment on home video, and in fact were out of print for quite some time. So it was a complete shock and surprise that anyone announced they were going to do a special edition of one of them, let alone a box set of all 3 of the original 1960s films. So before it went out of print and I regretted my existence, I had to go ahead and get Imprint's release of the Harry Palmer collection, bringing together all 3 of the Harry Saltzman produced 1960s Harry Palmer films starring the legend himself, Michael Caine, in what I believe is his signature, most iconic role, particularly in the original film, The Ipcress File. So this brings together Blu-ray presentations of 1965's The Ipcress File, 1966's Funeral in Berlin, and 1967's Billion Dollar Brain, all with different directors and really completely different approaches to the spy film genre, but ostensibly all supposing to be the anti-James Bond film, ironically produced by Harry Saltzman, the co-producer of the James Bond films. So this has the same slip-top box design as the other Imprint sets, the same exact box lid, and has the very slick, heavy laminated feel to it. It looks wonderful, but I have to say, the cover image does look a little plain. This is one of the more iconic Kane is Palmer shots, but of course he doesn't have Harry's iconic glasses on in the shot. So I don't know. I've dreamed about putting a box together like this for so long that I'm happy to have anything, because Ipcress File itself was out of print in the U.S. from 1999 until Kino Lorber put out a copy of the British Master last year. So it was out of print for over 20 years. So it's amazing to have any versions readily available with extras. But I just wish the art was a little more flashy or fancy or whatever. But again, I'll take whatever I can get. It looks nice enough. So again, it's the lift top box. Imprint usually goes for some color. Here they've gone with orange. Then the 3 discs are in individual cases with original poster art. Ipcress File has a segment, the Harry face part of the one of the main one sheets from the original ad campaign. This has some additional new extras. It ports over everything that was on the network Blu-ray reissue, which is, outside the extras here, that's still my go-to disc for Ipcress File, and that's the same master that Kino used, and that's the same master that is on this release. It's a 2K scan restoration that was done by ITV Studios. However, what's great about this, I really wanted to get the Kino release, but when I found out it was just the same master, I realized, be buying the same disc. But they commissioned a new commentary that I was really wanting to hear. That's been included here. So if you get this, you don't need to get the Kino release for that commentary track. That's included here. But this also has the priceless commentary that dates back to the Roan Laserdisc. That is with director Sidney J. Furie and the legendary editor Peter Hunt, who cut the film. It's one of the best commentary tracks, or one of the most priceless ones for me, because I'm such an Ipcress obsessive. So again, no booklet, but great interior image. And again, this is the same master we've had since the ITV Blu-ray first came out, and the network reissued it with a better encoding and more extras. This does add some new pieces, as do all 3 of these discs. So the new extras are a locations report, an interview with the second AD of the film, and then an interview with the assistant production accountant. So what's really interesting about these, and what I'm most excited to check out, are these new extras where they talk to surviving crew personnel, and even if they're lower down on the crew ladder, it's still going to be amazing to have any first person accounting of the actual production and shoot of the film. Then moving on to the extremely underrated follow-up, Funeral in Berlin. This uses the original poster artwork, which has this sort of pastel coloring to it. Nice image for the interior. This is the same 1080p master that Paramount just released on a MOD Blu-ray disc, which of course I bought because I'm a Palmer nut. So I'm going to be curious to check out the encoding differences, but it is the same disc master as what Paramount released here, and that was pretty much the DVD master, but in HD. So unfortunately, this film has not gotten a new scan. It really does need it, but the Blu-ray was at least somewhat of an improvement over the DVD, which was out of print for a very long time. So this film has been very tough to find. It's usually much more obscure. They did commission some new extras. They did commission a new commentary by Rob Mellows of the Dayton Dossier, which is going to be really interesting because I've been to that site many times. It's really the best Dayton fan site for the works of Lynn Dayton, and of course, jumping over into the film adaptations and the Palmer films. Then there's an interview with the film's editor, John Bloom. Then there is a vintage interview with Dayton from 1983, a vintage interview of Michael Caine, television documentary for 1969, which is on some of the other releases and is a fun sort of vintage. This is what Caine's stardom and career looked like in 1969. And then there's another Kane documentary from 1994. Also includes the trailer and a photo gallery, which each of these discs has a really nice stills section and trailers included. I must say though that the rear covers on all of these are on the plain side, but again, I'm just beyond just beyond stunned this box set exists. And then lastly is 1967's Billion Dollar Brain, directed by Ken Russell. This is a film that it has a particular weirdness to it that does not agree with, I'd say, about 85 to 90% of audiences. It is very weird. It takes several viewings to really get a handle on, and you can definitely tell that Ken Russell made this, but it is the most normal film that Ken Russell ever made. So it has those things going for it. It's got a very haunting quality, though, to it that makes it completely. There's no other film like Billion Dollar Brain. So the trilogy of films is interesting that each one has its own identity, its own director, but with Michael Caine returning and Harry Saltzman producing, and some crew working on all three. But this is the same 1080p master that MGM prepared, that they first released on the very quickly available DVD that then went out of print in like 2 seconds. That was bare bones. Kino released the film on Blu-ray, and that has now gone out of print. But it was a big jump over the DVD, even though it was still an old master. So now, technically, as far as I'm aware, this is the easiest way to get the film on Blu-ray because the Kino disc is out of print and has shot up in price. That was bare bones. This does bring over some extras, so you get a brand new audio commentary. Then there's another interview with Rob Mallows from the Dayton dossier. Then there's an interview with the film cinematographer, an interview with the film's associate editor, a vintage 1969 Michael Caine interview, plus the trailers and a photo gallery. This going for very pink back. So I guess they just went for these bold colors for the rears for each film. And it works, but I just adore these films so much that I wish they had gotten a little fancier with the art. But these are nice designs that all match and go together. And of course, the insert card that was on the rear with the extras listed out. So again, unfortunately, there's no booklet, but it's just amazing to get all these three films together with new extras, with nice packaging, because this is, this is a dream release. This is like one of my first 10 things I would try to do if I started my own video label. And, I'd still try to do it, because these films really deserve 4K scans and brand new restorations, because these are unfortunately dated masters. Kino was going to try and do a 4K restoration for IPRES file, but wasn't allowed to because the elements were in Britain and they're of course over here in the US. But for the time being, this is definitely the fanciest package these films have gotten, and it's amazing to get them all together because they're all with different studios. My one real issue with this is that it doesn't have anything to do with, and it doesn't include the. They're pretty crummy. They're not very good. But the two 1990s made-for-television Michael Caine vehicles where he returns as Harry Palmer, those being Bullet to Beijing and Midnight in St. Petersburg, those films are very tough to find. You can find them online in very crummy quality and usually edited or missing some pieces. They were released on VHS, and then they got a Canadian DVD release. I have the Bullet to Beijing one, but I haven't found or tracked down the Midnight in St. Petersburg one yet. I've seen the film several times. I think they were originally shown on Showtime. They were produced by Harry Allen Towers. They did not have very high budgets. They actually did go and shoot in Russia when it was, and the conditions were, shall we say, not the safest for the cast and crew. So it's one of those where reading about the production is maybe more entertaining than seeing them. But they are parts of the Harry Palmer legacy and the story, and you do have Michael Caine returning to, again, what I think is his most iconic role. He gets the don the glasses once more. I wish it hadn't gone out that way. I still hold out the insane hope that there somehow could be one more Palmer story, but they should be included. If you're going to do a Harry Palmer box set, basically, you should include those, even if they're standard def, as extras, so that way people could actually see them and look at them as curios or curiosities, and there are some fans of them. There are one or two good things in them, and you have Michael Caine playing Harry again. I mean, I'll take it even if it's a low-budget, mid-90s, made-for-cable television not very good production, I'll take it. So I wish those had been included. That's the one real missing element of this release for me, but still, it's amazing that this exists. So I will be doing a review of this as soon as I get time, and I will be comparing to the other versions and my tons of versions of Ipcrest because, again, these films have been so in and out of print and so underrepresented in both film criticism and appreciation, and especially home video, that basically us Palmer fans have been having to take what we can get. And also, it's also great if you love these films and you haven't read Dayton's original novels. They're a real eye-opener because they do contain differences, and there were some novels that were unfortunately never able to be adapted to films. Primarily the second novel, Horse Underwater, which was going to be a Palmer film, and it just never came to pass. So we potentially almost had a fourth film, but it just never happened. But this is a dream release. This is something I never thought would happen. So I was like, I've got to get this. Even if the encoding may not be as good as some of the other versions that used to say masters, this does have exclusive new extras and this wonderful package, finally bringing together all three of the original 1960s Harry Palmer film trilogy. So that's it for this particular video. It's just a handful of titles I picked up on DVD and Blu-ray. So as I like to do, I like to try and do this video documentation as my collection continues to grow and grow and grow. The only trouble is you run out of shelf space, and then what do you do? So as always, keep your disc spinning, keep supporting your boutique and studio physical media labels, keep physical media alive, and thanks ever so much for watching.